Hey everybody, Corey here coming at you with another knife review. Today it is of the Protech Strider. This was sent to me by a viewer who will remain unnamed unless he wants me to name him, and I can name you later. But this is a really cool knife. This is a knife that, a lot of people talk about that I never thought I would have the luxury of being able to handle because personally it is not to my taste. So, I would never have one in my collection, but thankfully a viewer was kind enough to send this to me, and we get to check one out. So today we'll start with the size comparisons as we always do, beginning with the ZT0452 and also with the Ontario knives rat number 2. So what we can see here is that some might consider this a large knife, but it's not quite up to the level of the ZT. I think it is much more accurately referred to as a mid-sized knife. It's not so big that it makes a scene, but it's not so small that you feel like, it's a tiny knife. No, it definitely fills out the hand well. Speaking of filling out the hand well, the only thing that I really want to call out here prior to jumping into the review, in terms of materials, this is aluminum. This is not titanium, and this contributes, or, whatever else you might have thought it was. This contributes to the weight, or rather the lack thereof. This knife is not that heavy. For exact specs, as always, I will link the specs in the description. But for the record, it's not like you're holding onto a hunk of steel here. This is actually, a very manageable knife, whether it be in the hand or in the pocket. So let's just take a look at this. I really like the texturing on the handle itself. It's kind of hard to describe until you actually touch it. It's smooth enough to where it's inoffensive as you hold the knife or as you handle the knife, but it's also rigid enough or aggressive enough to where it actually does provide traction once you start, digging your fingers into it. When you're actually grabbing the knife, it does actually add a bit more traction. So that's actually really nice. It's a nice way to add some traction without it being offensive. And oh, by the way, I personally don't really have any qualms with this pattern or this texture. I don't think it's ugly. I don't think it's particularly attractive. But, sometimes I think they sacrifice aesthetics for texturing for the sake of grip or ergonomics. In this case, I don't think that's necessarily what's going on here. In terms of the action, I really don't know what to say about the action because, in terms of smoothness, yeah, it's smooth, but, it's assisted. So, or I guess rather it's an automatic because it just goes when you press this button right here. It does have a safety so that you can't just open it whenever you want. I haven't really made too much use of that, although I will say, having it there, I thought I just wouldn't use the safety, but I do actually find myself, when I just set the knife down next to me, I do just kind of instinctively put the safety on. I don't know, for some reason it gives me a little bit of security there. Also, this pocket clip, this is not how it comes from the factory. Maybe I should have opened with that. For the record, this knife, again, it was lent to me by a viewer. So I'm not reviewing this from the perspective of, hey, it's fresh out of the box, this is what one looks like from the factory. Rather, I'm reviewing the life, or the knife, after it has had some life, rather. So it's been used, it's been abused, and we're looking at it now. So the pocket clip does not always come like that. It would be, normal and clean. In terms of ergonomics, I'm actually, when I was looking at videos of this knife, a lot of people praise it for the ergonomics. And while I do think it has really good ergonomics, I think for what you're paying for one of these, which is generally going to be somewhere between $200 and $250, depending on where you're buying it from, I think, now again, this is going to be kind of hard to talk about without sounding like I'm crapping on the knife. It's good. The ergonomics are good. The blade shape is good. I generally like this knife. However, once we get into the $200 price point, I think there are just a few things that they could do with this knife to make it a little bit more comfortable. For example, you kind of look at the handle. It looks a little blocky, and it is a little blocky. However, I will say, this shape that they've got going on right here, it's kind of like a palm swell, except they didn't contour it. What I will say about this general shape fills out the hand very well. It's a very ergonomic shape. It feels very comfortable, and honestly, it feels even better when I choke up on it and I use the finger choil. However, I can definitely feel when I'm really gripping the knife, or when I'm, using it for more aggressive tasks, maybe, like a lot of cardboard, a lot of breaking down of cardboard, some boxes, I really do wish this was contoured. This is one of those things where I get it. The knife's been out for a while. I think they're kind of sticking with a, if it isn't broken, don't fix it kind of mentality. But I think for, upwards of $250, I think, a general improvement that could be made to this knife is a little bit more contouring here. Now, don't get me wrong. The edges are chamfered, right? They're not, again, like the other parts of the knife, they're not offensive. It doesn't hurt. It's not uncomfortable, but it could be more comfortable in my opinion. It's already, they nailed the shape. I think they could really take it one step further by adding a little bit of extra contouring on this side of the knife. There is some jimping down here closer towards the pocket clip itself. Doesn't really feel like it actively does a whole lot for me. In theory, you have to assume, well, it must provide some kind of traction. Not the way I'm using it, especially when you choke up on it like this. This doesn't really do anything for me, but I mean, it's there. I don't hate it. I don't think it takes away from the knife. So I guess I don't really have much to say about it. This jimping, on the other hand, this is kind of a sweet spot jimping for me. It is aggressive enough to the point where it's actually useful, but it's not so aggressive that it chews up your fingers. I really do like that they continue it up the spine so that when you're choking up with the finger choil, you're actually, I mean, it's pretty much occupying my entire thumb up there. So they did a good job with the jimping, in my opinion. Blade shape, I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's very utilitarian, in my opinion. The fact that this doesn't have a flipper tab means that you don't have to worry about a flipper tab getting in the way of your cutting path down here. So that's good. I like it. There's really not a whole lot more I can say. This one, 154 cm. I do think they sell these in a few different variations, but this just happens to be the one that I'm reviewing right now. Again, in terms of the action, I want to get back to that. I will say, it opens very authoritatively. It definitely has quite a bit of thud, dare I even say recoil. It's not like you have to hold on to it for dear life, otherwise it'll jump out of your hand, but it's definitely a thud. I mean, you can see, look at my forearm. I mean, my arm kind of jiggles, unless I've got a really good grip on this knife. What can I say? Is it the end of the world? No. Does it really bother me? No. But apparently there are some people out there who say, oh my gosh, it's so aggressive. It opens so aggressively. Whatever. Maybe this isn't the knife for you if you're... I'm getting off topic. Don't be afraid of the knife. I think it's perfectly fine. It's a bit more authoritative on the opening than some other knives that I've handled, autos or just simply assisted knives. But honestly, it doesn't offend me at all. I will say, this is what I really want to get into here. This knife has been well used. You can just tell from the pocket clip itself. Look at that. The grease from his fingers, or the oils from his fingers at some point, you can almost see a fingerprint right there. I think that's actually pretty cool. You can kind of see it all over the thing, but long story short, I cleaned this up a little bit before I reviewed it after he gave it to me. This thing has seen some use. There were a few chips in the blade, and it definitely has not been babied. I will say, similar to my last review from the same person who lent me the Benchmade Contigo, this is really, this is holding up. Nothing is loose. There's no blade play. The action is still, wonderful. It's definitely put together very well. I can see the appeal of a Protech. Once I get into this price range, I tend to look for kind of more exotic designs, almost more box queens than actual knives that I'll end up using. But I will say, if you're going to pay this much for a knife, I don't feel ripped off, based on everything that I'm seeing here. It seems very well constructed. And this might seem like just the tiniest thing. And this is actually, I'm not about to nag the knife. I'm about to praise it. This is so smooth. Where the two pieces of aluminum meet for the handle, the tolerance is here. This is so smooth. This is so well done. And it's the same way all the way down the seam of where the knife, where the two portions of the handle meet. I really feel like that's a testament to this knife. I feel like that's a testament to the quality control that goes into a Protech knife. Of course, this is from my limited experience with this Protech knife. Sorry, I have the hiccups right now. But, I will say, I actually, this is such a knife nerd thing. When I run my finger across this, and I almost literally can't even feel the seam. The first time I did that, I actually got a chill. Because if every knife could be put together this well, oh, the knife world would just be so much of a better place. All in all, if this is something you've been interested in, I would say, maybe handle it first. It's very unique. It's very interesting looking. Again, not necessarily aesthetically my style, but it does the job. It's solid. I like the fact that, it can be as big or as small as you really need it to be, in terms of, there's a finger choil. It's going to fit anyone's hand. It's not so large that it's going to, annoy you all day long when it's in your pocket, but it's not so small that you feel like you can't trust it. And oh, by the way, this is something that I know Nick Shabazz would praise it for. It has this little landing pad under the pocket clip where they do not have texturing so that it doesn't chew up your pants. I do think that's something. It just shows that they continued to pay a little bit more attention to detail, and they said, you know what? We're going to do that before we're done with this thing. So all in all, good knife. Not necessarily my taste, but I would say if all Protechs are made like this, I would have 100% confidence in buying a Protech. So hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully you found it enjoyable, and I will see you guys next time.